Welcome in, everybody. This is David Shepard on the SiriusXM NBA Radio Postgame Show, Channel 86, and of course, heard on the SiriusXM app. I am joined by somebody that knows a thing or two about the San Antonio Spurs, NBA writer and analyst and Spurs Report editor, Dusty Garza. You can follow him on any social media platform at Spurs Reporter. Dusty, you got to be all smiles with what you saw take place in game number one between the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Have you ever been more impressed by Victor Wembanyama?
Never. I have to tell you, I've been covering this team for a lot of years, back even when David and Tim were playing. And somebody asked me the other day, what do you think? How long is it going to be before we actually make some noise in the playoffs, maybe get to a championship, et cetera? And I said, it's really hard to say because I think I haven't quite figured out if Victor is more like David Robinson, the tall, smart, big man who has, amazing athletic abilities, or if he has more Tim Duncan, which is I'm just here for business. I'll take care of business. I'll get it done. Fearless type of leader. And last night, I was convinced for the first time that Victor is more like Tim Duncan than he is David Robinson, or perhaps a combination of both. He was just amazing. He's incredible. He's so young, so much more to do. The goal of this team at the beginning of the year was to get into the playoffs and make some noise. That would have been, quote unquote, a successful, type of season. But they're doing so much more already. And even last night, watching the guys that took the floor without De'Aaron Fox, who, remember, was brought in to help during these types of moments, during these big types of stages and lights and pressure, ex-clutch player of the year, etc. And they're without him. And if I'm Oklahoma City right now, I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, they beat us last night without their second best player. So that's got to be a little worrisome for them.
Oh, that's really well said, Dusty. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, Victor Wembanyama goes for a 41 point, 24 rebound performance. He was doing everything and then some, including diving on the floor, hitting his face. You're worried about concussion protocol all over again, but
Right.
becomes the youngest player in NBA postseason history to record a 40-20 game, breaking the record of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's pretty good company, Dusty. I've spoken to Bob Bryant about this. I've spoken to NBA historians that have followed the sport since the 1950s.
Yes.
I know I can ask you this, and I'm not going to get a biased answer. I'm going to get a partisan answer.
Sure.
Two-part question. Victor Wembanyama, should he have won the MVP? And is this, without a shadow of a doubt, in your opinion, the most unique player we've seen in the history of the sport?
Well, certainly the most unique player I've ever seen. I wish I were around to see back in the days when some of the greats were playing, and you hear about Wilt's 100-point game and things like that. I wish I would have had that type of experience, but I can only imagine that this is what my great grandparents and grandparents were excited about when they watched those types of games. I think that he definitely deserved to be at least considered very heavily for MVP because, as he said, I'm impacting the game on both sides of the floor. And that is what is amazing and spectacular, and every other adjective that we can try to look for in regards to how this young man is playing. And he's doing it at such a young age. This is only the beginning. We can only imagine what might happen as, the story progresses, because he is unstoppable on both sides, and to see him blossom, to see him get comfortable, and to see him mentally come back from such a heavy thing that he dealt with last season with the blood clot and the uncertainty that he felt. He certainly was scared. He certainly was intimidated by the physicality or the limits of his physicality, of his physical being, which are always such, mixed bag of news when you talk about these big men and their longevity in the NBA. So to see him come back from that, to see him this summer spending time with the monks and then with Hakeem and with, everybody and anybody to try to improve is a real testament to the fact that this is the most important thing to him, that he wants to win at the highest levels. And so, it was an interesting answer he gave last night when they asked him, do you think that you are the best player in the NBA or in the world?
Right.
And he said, there's 7 billion people or 8 billion people, there are 8 billion opinions. And I don't know how I feel right now. I feel tired. And it was just perfect. He's always answering the question just perfectly.
Dusty Garza. I'm always, and by the way, you can follow Dusty Garza at Spurs Reporter on any social media platform, NBA writer and analyst, Spurs Report editor, does a wonderful job covering the San Antonio Spurs.
Thank you. You're too kind, sir. Thank you.
Dusty, it's interesting. I'm blown away by his maturity. I can't speak for you, but I know at
Yeah.
22, I was not as cerebral. I was not as introspective. I was not as mature.
Yeah.
He's got the weight of the world on him. Look, you're stepping into that franchise as the number one overall pick, and the comparisons are going to be made to Tim Duncan right away. And he has not only met expectation, but he has exceeded expectation. Somebody who has also met expectation is the number two overall pick, Dylan Harper. Now, in the regular season, he was not even the sixth man for this team. That was the winner of the Sixth Man of the Year award in Keldon Johnson, which just shows you how balanced and deep this team is. We can talk for ages about the incredible playmaking ability of Stefan Castle in game one. Obviously, he was a great floor general. He was someone that was making great passes. You can talk about the clutch shooting of a Julian Champagny, of a Devin Vassell. But to me, what stood out the most was a rookie going on the road in game one of a Western Conference Finals, who's not even a starter, who gets to start in place of De'Aaron Fox and outplays the back-to-back MVP. Dusty, did you see Dylan Harper being this good this fast? Because I didn't have that on my bingo card. The potential was there, but I didn't see him outplaying the back-to-back MVP in the Western Conference Finals.
No, absolutely not. Um, I was a little worried, to be honest, when I kept hearing during the offseason that the Spurs were not looking at making any potential trades for that number two pick. But the Spurs were so confident. I mean, from day one, they were telling people, we're back, before the pick was made. And of course, the target was always Dylan. But people who've been in this business see something, interesting when it comes to these young players, especially when they come from basketball royalty like Dylan comes from, his
Yes.
bloodline, his dad, an amazing, supportive player, star in his own rights, 6 championships. I think he's got, six.
Three with the Bulls, two with the Lakers. Yeah.
Okay, so five,
Yeah,
five
yeah,
rings.
yeah.
This guy has been around. He knows what it takes. He and his wife did an amazing job of raising Dylan. And Dylan's confidence comes from his practice. You can tell if you've ever played the sport, that for you to know the angles, where to bounce the shot off the backboard, how to attack the basket, what limitations you've got physically to attack the rim, that comes from practice. There's no other way you can learn that. It's not in your genes and any of that. But when you combine both things, when you combine the genetics and being raised in the circus, as they say in the business, when you come from a circus family, a family that's been around the NBA, that's been around these types of pressure situations and so forth, it adds so much more intelligence to your game, so much more experience through your parents, certainly through the people around him, like Manu Ginobili, who spend a lot of time talking to him and giving him bits of wisdom. But no, I didn't see it coming. I saw it coming with Stefan Castle, to be honest. You know, Even before he was in the league, I thought, this kid is amazing. When he got to the league, I remember on media day, the first day of practice, I talked to him and I'm looking up at this guy. I'm 6'2", and
Yeah.
I'm looking up at this guy and realizing this is our starting point guard. Like,
He's a
holy
legit
cow.
6'6", right?
He's legit six
Yeah.
six, and so is Dylan. Dylan
Yeah.
is also
Yeah.
6'6". These two guys are big guys, and I'm not used to looking up at people. And I realized for the first time, like, I'm used to talking to Tony Parker, who's the same height as me. I'm looking up at this guy and realizing that these guys are going to be like very special. But I saw it very early on, and we had been through a slew of draft picks in San Antonio that had the deer in the headlights, intimidated look, young players coming into the league for the first time who maybe didn't come from basketball families. And I wasn't used to the immediacy of them stepping onto the floor and performing the way they did. And, talking about that, last night, San Antonio puts the record breaking youngest group of players, starters in NBA history, a record that had stood the test of time 50 years or so, 1977. The Portland Trailblazers and their young team, led by Bill Walton at the time. The Spurs put a bunch of young guys because De'Aaron Fox was out. Their age came down tremendously, and they're able to easily overtake that record by like a year and a half or something crazy. So, yeah, you talk about the impact and not sort of being able to see how quickly these guys were going to step in and what they're doing is amazing. And they don't know any better. Like, people are saying you need experience, you need this, you need that. And even Victor says, well, if we don't know, we don't care. We're going to do it. And they're doing it, man. And it's amazing.
That is amazing. And speaking of amazing, always appreciate the coverage of Dusty Garza as someone who does it at an extremely high level as an NBA writer, analyst, and a Spurs report editor. You can follow him at Spurs Reporter on any social media platform. I got two more for you.
Sure.
One, when you talk about the San Antonio Spurs doing something to the Oklahoma City Thunder that no team has done this postseason, and that is actually get a victory against the reigning defending champions, right? Dusty, we hadn't seen anyone go 8-0 in the postseason this decade until OKC. They had only lost one game with
That's right.
SJ on the floor since the month of January. It's insane. Now, obviously, you are well aware of the regular season matchup that these two teams have had against each other. The Spurs 4-1, 3-1 when SJ is on the floor. But for them to go without De'Aaron Fox in game one on the road and be able to withstand all the blows that they had to absorb from Oklahoma City, when it seemed like so many instances they had squandered that lead, and then you heard the shot around the world from Victor Wembanyama from the 40 feet out from the logo for 7'5". It's unreal, man.
Crazy.
Um, I look, the Oklahoma City Thunder maybe needed a wake-up call. Maybe they were feeling a little too confident, a little too comfortable, a little too secure. Maybe they felt like this was going to be in the bag because De'Aaron Fox was not available on the floor. But I like San Antonio in this series. I like
Yes.
them. I like them because Victor is just a bad matchup for anybody. But Chet is too small. I know that's crazy to say about someone 7'1". What
Crazy.
does this game one victory mean for you in terms of what is ultimately going to play out for the rest of this series? How do you envision it going?
You know, for me, I thought that this OKC puzzle was solved 2 years ago by a guy, and I invite you to watch the tape of the game, especially the coming in goings out of timeouts. Watch how the players interact with a guy who's sitting on the bench named Sean Sweeney, associate head coach of the San
Mm,
Antonio Spurs, the guy who got the Dallas Mavericks past OKC a couple of years ago.
yes.
He knows how he's got the key to the puzzle of that amazing defense that OKC plays. He really, when they picked him up this summer, and it was an interesting situation because they wanted to place the agent that is Sean Sweeney's agent is also the agent for Mitch Johnson, and he saw an opportunity, and they put their heads together and said, "Look, Sean wants to leave Dallas. He's looking for an opportunity. If you guys can give him an associate head coach opportunity, a step up in the ladder, he would be interested in joining you." And Mitch, of course, is a student of the game more than people realize. Even when he was a player, he was just known as the sage, and many people still call him that because he can see the floor in a very different way. These guys put together very quickly in the offseason a game plan to elevate the Spurs from being one of the five worst defensive teams to being one of the best. And nothing is guaranteed, of course, but that was their goal, and they've achieved it. And so I think Oklahoma City is in trouble for that one reason. The second reason Oklahoma City is in trouble is we got Jason Williams. Sorry, is it Jay Will, um, struggling with his leg. A couple of times last night, you saw him grabbing at his leg, and I thought to myself, they
You,
brought him.
yeah, and obviously you mean J Dub, Jalen
J
Williams.
Dub. That's
Because there's a lot of Jalen's in the NBA these days. It's tough to keep track of, Dusty.
yes,
Jalen Brown, Jalen Brunson. They got two
yes,
Jalen's on OKC.
and it's hard
But
to remember which one is which. But
all right,
yes,
and let's be honest, there's a lot of Jason Williams in the history of the NBA too.
yes. I'm sorry. Did I say Jason? I meant
Yeah,
Jalen.
yeah, yes,
All
yes,
right.
yes,
So
yes.
going back, Jalen Williams last night. If you watch the game, there's a couple of times when he reaches for his leg, and I thought, oh my
Yes,
gosh,
double overtime. I know exactly
yes.
what you're talking about. He came up limping. Yes,
And I
100%.
got so much crap from Oklahoma City fans, and I don't blame them. I mean, they're homers, they're cheering on their team. When I said you're
Right.
bringing him back too fast, and when they gave the notice that he was going to be back week to week, they were going to monitor his progress. I'd seen what happened with De'Aaron Fox and how many months he missed from a similar injury. And
Yeah.
what happens in that situation is people were saying, "Oh no, it's the other leg. It's fine. It's not the same leg he injured." I said, "Yes, but here's what you're missing. What you're missing is there's overcompensation now on the other leg, and then the other leg got hurt." And I still feel that that may become an issue as this series goes on. They're in a situation where they're kind of backed up against the wall, and they have to make this decision to play him. But in an ideal world, you should have probably kept him out because you're
Yeah.
playing with fire. These are very serious, very combustible type injuries. So I think that's the second reason OKC is in trouble. The third reason they're in trouble, in my mind, is because the Spurs just have too many weapons. We've seen it time and again. Like I said at the beginning, they beat you last night in double overtime in a very hard fought game. The Spurs did without their second best player on the floor. That's got to be in the back of your mind. Now, on the positive side, my gosh, my respect for their coach is he's my favorite NBA coach. Honestly, I think he is a brilliant mind, and I think that he's going to come back with some things we haven't seen. But they didn't beat him just once or twice or three times during the regular season.
Right.
You know,
Five
it,
times in all
what
now. Yes.
yeah, like how do
Yeah.
you what bag of tricks do you reach into to try to solve that? It may just be the fact that, like I said, the Spurs just have too many weapons.
So, Dusty, this is what I want to end on because you're a perfect person to ask this question to. We're obviously doing this interview a little bit before April 25th, but you know why that date is important, right? You
Yes,
know
sir.
exactly where I'm going with this.
Yes, sir.
So, this is an individual that is going to be 50 years old in Tim Duncan, and I am going to literally play this clip on that date, and hopefully SiriusXM NBA Radio tweets it out as well. I know I'm tweeting it out. There is one player in NBA history to make 15 all NBA defensive teams, win five titles, three finals MVP awards, two regular season MVP awards. It's not Kareem. It's not Michael. It's not
No.
the late, great Kobe Bryant. It's Tim Duncan. He's going to be 50 on May 25th, 2026. When we have that GOAT conversation, he never gets brought up, ever. He's always considered an all-time great. He's always considered by far the greatest power forward to ever live, but he never gets entered in that conversation. So for somebody who has covered this sport as long as you have, and specifically Tim Duncan's career, can you make a legitimate argument that Tim Duncan, without a shadow of a doubt, does belong in that GOAT conversation based off what you witnessed in your coverage of TD?
You know, the biggest issue I ever had with TD, because at that time, one of the things that I ended up becoming was his social media manager. I used to run his website and deal with his then wife, Amy. And
I did. I
I,
wait. I never knew that. Really?
yeah, I did. And
Wait. Tim Duncan trusted somebody that didn't have a Spurs uniform on?
yes, and
Wait, time
actually,
out.
oh,
Wait. In the media, Dusty? This is breaking news.
well, RC Buford was a friend of mine, and RC saw that I had, because at the time, we're talking about the infancy of the internet and it's just coming along and so forth. So RC and I had actually become friends over the internet via email when the internet was just a bunch of like uh, crazy nerds who were playing with this, these hubs that existed where you could get on ramps onto the internet. This before, AOL and all that other stuff was
Sure.
going on. So RC knew that I was good at it and had some abilities when it came to the internet. And he said, we need somebody I can trust with Tim. I'm going to give you exclusive access to him. You'll have the ability to interface with him, etc. I was like, yeah, what do how much do I pay you? So we did that for a number of years. And my biggest complaint was always the
Yeah.
reason why Tim Duncan isn't in that conversation already. And that's because he's a very humble, quiet guy who just shows up for business. And he was never, he didn't have LeBron's or Michael's ability to say the right things to the media or whatever. He couldn't wait to get off the camera. He couldn't wait to have his privacy and his own moments. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons. But does he belong there? My gosh, yeah, of course he does. He's incredible. Will he ever get to that point? Probably not, because there's this kid named Victor Wembanyama now who's on his tail, who's probably going to, decimate some of these records that we're talking about. So, but in my mind's eye and in my heart, looking back at those days, and really, what a gentleman Tim was on and off the court. His favorite thing I remember was going to one of the local restaurants and loading up with pasta before every game, and you look at that and you realize this is a guy who just loved to play basketball, who had his own way of doing things. And my gosh, 5 championships later, it's amazing to look at that. And all those accomplishments you mentioned are, incomparable. And he really, another guy obviously in that conversation was Kobe. And Kobe and he shared a great friendship, and they were both very, very special people who had an incredible personality and a love for the game. I remember one time going into the Alamo Dome at the time, really early in the morning to get a press credential, and nobody was around. It was like 6 in the morning, and here's Kobe Bryant. You can hear the gym, like the weight machines coming out of one of the locker rooms. What's going on? What's going on here? Well, sure enough, it was Kobe Bryant working out before the break of dawn. Amazing love and commitment for the game. Same thing Tim had. You can't do this without loving the game.
It's a great answer. That's NBA royalty. And
Yes,
Tim Duncan, the only thing you hope for him is what you hope for anyone. Peace, tranquility, happy life, happy family.
and
But
we
he's
haven't
some
seen the documentary yet. We were
yeah,
teased with this documentary. I
yeah.
don't know what's going on the
Well, he's
distribution side, but
he's like a JD Solinger. Like
yes,
he's like a Sandy Koufax. You just
yes,
you everything that you want to know from them was done on their respective field or their respective court or in their
correct.
respective literature. And they let the game do the talking for them. They in their minds, they don't need to be an individual that sells the sport or sells their craft or grants interviews or grants access because their body of work speaks for itself. And I think Jack
Absolutely.
Nicholson is in that stratosphere as well, as someone that said, "Look, I don't need to do the Tonight Show. I don't need to do Inside the Actor Studio. My work speaks for itself. You want to know me? Go purchase a ticket. Go, go
Yeah,
to a film festival and hear, and hear me speak in that domain." But Tim Duncan is someone that is so special, man. Could have very easily, as you know, Dusty, been a Finals MVP back in 2014 when Kawhi got it. Now, listen, I'm not saying Kawhi didn't deserve it, but you can make a legitimate argument that Tim Duncan was the Finals MVP at 38 years old. I could talk to you
absolutely.
forever about the Spurs, man. I
Anytime,
really,
anytime, brother.
yeah, really, Dusty, really, really enjoyed it, man. And for anyone listening, watching this interview, please follow Dusty at Spurs Reporter on any social media platform. He does a great job really covering this team inside and out. NBA writer, analyst, Spurs Report editor. Dusty, we'll do this again at some point. Really appreciate your time on SiriusXM NBA Radio, my friend.
Anytime, brother. Thank you so much for having me.